Today, we are talking the Yellow Jacket and the biggest takeaways from the first spring scrimmage. Now, as y'all know, they don't allow me to get in, man, but we got a lot of clues and cues from head coach Brent Key. So let's break it all down for my Georgia Tech fan base, the ones that follow me. Now, numero uno, right? We're going to go to the offensive line. Obviously, that's the thumbnail of this video and everything like that. The offensive line looks like a unit they're starting to figure out. And I will say it feels like the whole right side of the offensive line is pretty much good to go, right? They got Joseph Ionata on the inside. They obviously have moved Jamison Riggs to right tackle, and they've moved Malachi Courtney, who had a pretty good season last year coming over from South Alabama, to the right guard spot. So things are starting to make a lot of sense for Georgia Tech on the offensive line, and development has been obviously massive for them. You look at guys like Jordan Floyd, who Coach Key has talked about. He's a guy that's kind of rotated at guard and tackle for them on the left side of the offensive line, and he did his thing. You go back and look at Georgia Tech's social media account. He was a guy that was, he stymied a defender, right? He stymied a guy and really imposed his will. That's one of the key things that head coach Brent Key wanted to address this offseason was the offensive line, right? He felt like it was good, but he didn't like how this team finished out the season last year. He wanted more. He wanted it to be better, right? He wanted more size and more girth on that offensive line and guys that could impose their will on defense. And with all these movements that you see, Coach Key was a man amongst boys and obviously made that known. Bringing in guys like Markel Samuel, Favorite Edwin, and obviously key development of Kevin P., who he mentioned obviously in his press conference as well. So several guys that he wanted to hit on and bring in to make this unit better. And I feel like the development has been massive for Georgia Tech. And that's one of the big takeaways here is the offensive line continues to stand out. Okay, next up, y'all, is the QB competition, right? Provided an update on it and everything that's going on with the QBs. Now, there's one key piece I want to talk about. Now, I read the full article, but one key piece I want to talk about that he said that really stood out to me is this right here. I think Alberto has a good chance to be a good player for us this year. But you know what? Like every young player, he's going to make a mistake. That part right there stood out to me because he says it has a good chance to be a good player for us this year, which means they see him in the future sites to be potentially the QB1. No, it has not been announced. Yes, it's a competition between him, Grady Adamson, the guy that he's talked very highly of. Also, Graham Knowles making great throws and things like that. And Cole Bergeron, who's a 4-star prospect coming out of high school. But it feels like Alberto Mendoza is beginning to separate from the pack and continuing to stand out in front of head coach Brent Key and obviously the staff and coach Chris Winkie and offensive coordinator and all that good stuff. It feels like Alberto Mendoza is starting to kind of become that front runner for that position. Now, again, nothing will probably be announced. We probably won't see anything maybe up until the summer or fall. And obviously that's good for Coach Key, but it feels like that Alberto Mendoza is starting to kind of run away with the position a little bit if you read through the tea leaves and some things Coach Key said. Now, he didn't say that verbatim, but if you read the tea leaves. Okay, numero tres, right? Also, spring takeaway is Dalen Pinson has officially moved from cornerback to wide receiver. Now, we did a full video on that. Shout out to y'all for running that video up. But that is one of my key takeaways. And as I said in the video, I won't regurgitate everything that I said, but one of the key things I want to talk about is he raises the floor of that room. There were so many questions about who else is it going to be besides, obviously, Jordan Allen. Now, Isaiah Furman, he's obviously out, dealing with injury according to Javar Williams and what he said in his presser. So he has not been fully healthy. But nonetheless, right, they got another guy that could take the top off the defense. And that is what Coach Key talked about in his presser. They need another guy that could do that. And they feel like they have that with Dalen Pinson. And I feel like with him being a multiple-time state champion in 110-meter hurdles, right, being fast, being a dual sport athlete, also running track with Georgia Tech, being an aerospace engineer as well, or studying that, this kid is very smart, very cerebral, right? So now you get another guy, and people are going to probably overlook him early on in the season that can take the top off the defense, that can make big plays. They need this, and he's done it in high school. He did it at Sandy Creek, as I alluded to in my other video. So this is nothing new for him. But I think the Georgia Tech wide receiver room got so much better with this addition. Now, going back to Coach Key, the defensive line, also a big-time, standout, obviously, in the scrimmage. And he kept mentioning, we're bigger. Right, we're big. And he mentioned all the defensive linemen they got, man, like on the defensive tackle spot, 10 to 12 guys. Obviously in the defensive line room, he feels good about this group. Now, key members that I think you're going to have to watch out for is going to be Christian Garrett making the full move from defensive line or edge rusher / tweener to officially defensive tackle. And Coach Simpson talked about everything that he brings to the table and how good he's obviously been. And he's finally fully healthy, according to Coach Jess Simpson. You bring in also Tawfiq Thomas and Vincent Carroll Jackson, who I think will be some big-time playmakers on the interior of the defensive line for them. Again, this was a run defense that ranked number 88 in the country. Just not good enough if you're going to win consistently. You need more pressure, you need more guys filling gaps, and you need more TFLs in the run game. Then you got guys that you brought in like, obviously, Tim Griffin, right? Guys like Noah Carter. Those guys are expected to make a big-time difference for Georgia Tech moving forward. And then in development of Amontre Bradford, Braden Manley, Andre Fuller Jr., right? That's going to be massive for Georgia Tech moving forward because they need more pressure on the quarterback. But the key name that's ringing a lot of bells from Coach Key is Jordan Walker. He was very impressed with him, as he talked about in his press conference, and a guy he feels like has a major ceiling and is going to make a difference. He mentioned him several times in his presser, and that's going to be a guy to continue to watch moving forward is Jordan Walker. So yeah, y'all, those are some of the big key takeaways from head coach Brent Key and everything that he had to say, obviously, in his press conference and obviously the standouts from the first scrimmage. Now, I do think, like I said, other players have a chance. Gavin Harris is going to be one to watch at the tight end position. Very good, bro. Has a whole lot of potential. Very special. And I think he's a guy like you're going to have to keep an eye on. You're going to have to pay attention to in that passing game. And he gives them a different dynamic, in my humble opinion. They need more pass catchers at tight end. They also need blockers, of course. But think about this. You're running the ball a lot, right? They're trying to slow down Justice Haynes, Malachi Hosley, J.P. Powell, and Shane Marshall. And imagine you have a guy that can run a seam route, a guy that can run a dig, a shallow cross, right? An outside route, a corner route, and a Gavin Harris that can make a difference for your team and be able to obviously slip behind the defense and make a big play, a 30, 40-yard gain. That's what he brings to the table. So that's going to be one of my key factors and members to watch this year is him, and I think he can make a big difference for Georgia Tech. So those are some of the key takeaways from the first spring scrimmage for Georgia Tech. They're going to have another one this weekend on Saturday. Obviously, we'll see what happens there. And then officially, the white and gold game on the 18th. So it'll be interesting to watch, man. But several standouts from the scrimmage. Offensive line is doing a great job. Defensive line is big and it's huge. And obviously, Dalen Pitson making that move permanently to wide receiver is going to make a difference for them. And Alberto Mendoza, the front runner for the QB1 position.